Well, thank you, everyone. It's my great pleasure to welcome you all here tonight on behalf of the board, the staff and the members of ACTA. This is the 2022 Clinical Trials National Tribute and Awards Ceremony. For those who don't know me, my name is Mick Jardine. I'm a board director of the Australian Clinical Trials Alliance, as well as the director of the University of Sydney NHMRC Clinical Trials Centre. And it's my absolute honour to be emceeing for you all tonight at the 6th ACTA Awards ceremony. I'd like to begin tonight's ceremony by acknowledging that we meet on the lands of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and I acknowledge they're the traditional custodians of this land. I pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and extend that respect to any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander people with us tonight. It's exciting to host this hybrid event, to extend access through remote participation, but also get the benefits of enjoying being in the same room together. I'd like to welcome our distinguished guests, the Honourable Brad Hazzard, the New South Wales Minister for Health, Professor Ann Kilso, AO, CEO of the NHMRC, as well as the leaders and senior representatives we have with us here tonight. I'd also like to recognise my colleagues here and online from the ACTA board, our new ACTA CEO, Dr. Stuart Hay, and our dedicated multidisciplinary award judging panellists from across Australia, who've donated their time to ensuring these awards are all independently assessed on merit. I'd like to extend my thanks to our long-standing premium partners for this event, Bellberry Limited and MTP Connect. I'd like to thank our in-kind supporters, Oz Biotech, CTIQ, Medical Technology Association of Australia and Research Australia, while we at the University of Sydney NHMRC Clinical Trials Centre are very proud to be a venue partner. The tremendous support of these supporters for this event is remarkable, and we are very grateful for the long-term generosity you've shown to ACTA and indeed the trials sector. Thank you. It's great to have so many people coming together to celebrate these awards tonight, which are held today, International Clinical Trials Day. So to begin the event, please join me in welcoming the Honourable Brad Hazzard, the New South Wales Minister for Health.
Thanks very much, Meg, and good evening, everybody. I want to also just start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land upon which this award ceremony is occurring and thank them for their custodianship for about 60,000 years. And if there are any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander people here or online, I'd just particularly like to acknowledge you all. Look, it's a great privilege as Health Minister to be here and to be with obviously the leaders. We acknowledged Ann Kilso and a number of other of the leaders, but all of you are absolutely critical to the evolution of information that we get through the incredible importance of clinical trials. As Health Minister here in New South Wales for nearly 6 years, and medical research is within my portfolio, I've got to say one of the most exciting parts is actually not that not hanging out with Dr. Chant on TV is not exciting. That's very exciting. Even for monkeypox this afternoon, very exciting. But the research side is the part that really stimulates my excitement and interest. There's no question in my mind that we have the best health system here in New South Wales. Indeed, really right across Australia, the health systems are extraordinary. But I think each of the state and territory health ministers in other states are quite envious of the capacity, skill sets, the range of people that work within our health system here in New South Wales. And if it was ever going to be tested, we had our 1 in 100 year test just the last couple of years. But what struck me was that during that time again was that the clinical trials particularly, I mean, obviously there's investigator-led or driven clinical trials, there's industry clinical trials. What we actually had was amazing outcomes very quickly worldwide as a result of the clinical trials required to underpin our response to COVID-19. 2020 was a horrible year, horrible. I remember a night in March of 2019 where I sat in a room over at health headquarters, and our modelers informed me that I was going to be the minister that presided over the deaths of 25,000 people from COVID in that 1 year. I can't tell you how anxious the public health officials were in that period as well, because we had no vaccines. We didn't know really what we were dealing with. But across the world, we knew there were clinical trials and research going at 1 million miles an hour in many places, and they were networked, just as is promoted in this alliance. The networking of the clinicians and clinical researchers and researchers more broadly was at work. And I probably shouldn't be telling you, but we had a little chart up on the wall in one of the public health offices where we'd all taken bets on when we might actually get a vaccine. Somebody had written against the various dates, just below the various dates, never. That wasn't me. I had to think positively. So in that period, it was intensely brought home to me what I already knew. I mean, my first degree was in science, and I understood then the value, the intrinsic value of research, and therefore the intrinsic value, obviously, of clinical trials to underpin health systems and responses for patients. But in that time, it well and truly came home to me that we really need to make sure that we support our researchers, our clinical researchers, our researchers more broadly, industry that's also, we've got to support industry, we've got to work with them as well. And of course, tonight we get to do precisely that. We get to acknowledge through the very objective evaluation, as you just heard from Meg, we get to acknowledge the expertise of some of the clinical work, clinical research work, clinical trials that have gone on in this last period. So it is a delight for me to be here. I have to say also to those who are participants, I've been a participant, a consumer in one of those clinical trials. Consumers are also important, very important. If you don't have consumers for many of our clinical trials, you don't have a clinical trial. So can I say to those who are here representing the investigator-driven clinical trials, those who are consumers, those who may be looking on or maybe here tonight to support us from industry, thank you. We will certainly benefit in being able to provide these awards tonight and recognising excellence. But I want to say more broadly, thank you to all who actually take part in the research and clinical trials that have given us the very best capacity to respond for our patients across New South Wales, across Australia, indeed across the world. One of the things that struck me very early on was that from years ago when I was involved through another avenue, that we were seeing a much more collaborative approach with researchers. I know it's always difficult because funds come from various sources, and there's always an element, even if we don't want to admit it, of competition about accessing those funds for research. It's something we constantly try to address, but at the end of the day, it is about the networks. And I understand there's almost 60 networks that are operating through the Alliance. And I just want to say a very big thank you to the Alliance, but also to be able to do it on this day of international recognition of clinical trials is a very special day to do it. So I'm here to celebrate with you, and I look forward to hearing exactly who the big award winners are tonight, but thank everybody involved in clinical trials. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And a really welcome reminder of how far we have come in the last couple of years, despite the ongoing stresses that remain. So thank you. There's never been a more fitting time to pause and reflect on the changes that clinical trials have brought us. As the Minister said, for COVID-19, it's been a wonderful example of what we can achieve when we do all band together. The work on vaccine trials, for instance, is just one example. The ACTA Clinical Trials National Tribute and Awards were first held in 2016. And each year we get a flood of nominations, which are a real testament to the quality of the work in the area and to the drive and imagination that we see amongst Australian investigators and trialists. It's also apt at this time when we're banding together to note that this year we've introduced for the first time the ACTA Industry Partnership Awards, which is again a tribute to what we can achieve working together. The trials we'll hear about tonight are just some of the examples of how well Australia is positioned in the international trial conversation. While the pandemic has taught us a lot, it has also reaffirmed the strengths that were there, the approaches we have to trial design, to recruitment, creative approaches to new consent models, to collaboration and consumer involvement in trial design. We are robust and agile, and we want to continue to promote those activities. As we progress, I'd encourage you to truly celebrate our colleagues tonight and to take a personal pride in knowing that you're part of a very exciting and important time for our sector. And so with that, I'd like to invite a long-standing friend of these awards, Professor Ann Kilso, CEO of the NHMRC, to come forward and say a few words. Thank you, Ann.
Well, good evening, everyone. It's really lovely to be here and to be coming back again. John tells me I've been at every one of these awards, so I'm sure he's correct, and I always enjoy coming. I'd like to join Meg and the Minister in acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we're meeting tonight. And I also want to acknowledge how important it is that the Minister is here, because I think this is really just a reflection of the importance of clinical trials. That in such a busy life, I'm sure, and with other viruses to think about today, that the Minister has joined this group tonight. I also want to acknowledge all of you who participate in various ways in clinical trials, whether you're the researchers, the consumers, the clinicians, the industry, the very many people who come together to enable this to happen. And of course, I really appreciate the role that ACTA plays in promoting and celebrating clinical trials through these awards each year, along with your other activities. But I think it's really just a wonderful thing, and it's really been a very important way to promote the quality of trials in Australia. So not surprisingly, my theme is also COVID-19, because I think there's nothing like the emergence of a new virus to remind us why we need clinical trials. And like the Minister, I've been thinking back the 2 and a bit years to the beginning of the pandemic, and thinking about how much we didn't know at that time. And of course, we needed to understand the virus, we needed to understand how it spread and who it affected. But then very quickly, and perhaps even before those questions could be answered, we needed to know how to treat it. We needed to know whether existing drugs worked. We needed to know what to do when people needed to be admitted to hospital or to intensive care. And then really, again, as has already been said, faster than we could ever have imagined, there were vaccines to test. And then, of course, the questions were, how well do these things work? Which ones work best? How many doses do we use? And who do we give them to? And so these are all the sorts of questions that clinical trials have obviously been critical in addressing. So you don't need to be reminded of that, but I think we're all reflecting today on how important that's been over the last couple of years. And I think really that's when we all rely on you, the people with the deep expertise, to be able to give us these answers and to produce the evidence that we need, the really high quality evidence that will enable governments and individual clinicians and public health people to make good decisions about public health and clinical care. So I think also obviously clinical trials gave us the confidence to roll out vaccines on a massive scale. I mean, unlike anything that's been done before. And, you know, it's always tempting to use the word unprecedented again, but it really was unprecedented, that massive rollout in Australia and around the world of vaccines in a very short time. And without high quality clinical trials, we simply wouldn't have had that confidence. We needed the confidence to know how to use antiviral drugs and other interventions to look after people in hospital. And I think we all understand in this room how important that's been for the saving of many lives in this country. But we don't only need clinical trials when we're faced with a new challenge like COVID. Every day, well-designed and executed trials absolutely underpin the translation of the research discoveries, which NHMRC has a role in as well, and the production of evidence so that they can be transferred into sound practice, whether it's clinical practice or public health practice or healthcare in general. And I think one of the things I admire about the ACTA awards is the breadth of trials that they recognise and the real life clinical problems that they address. Now, sometimes they'll be testing some fancy new drug or device, But more often, it seems to me over the years, the trials that have won these awards have been testing maybe old drugs in new ways or in new combinations, or finding out what works better than something else, what's the better or the faster or the cheaper way to use existing tools. Really just very practical day-to-day questions that help clinicians, public health physicians and others to give the best possible public health decisions and patient care every day. And as I'm hinting, I suppose, clinical trials don't only apply to clinical care. Just as important are the high quality trials that test interventions to prevent disease or to manage it or to promote recovery. Unfortunately, we all know that not all clinical care is based on sound evidence, and I think we can be pretty sure that not all interventions to improve our health and well-being are based on any evidence at all. So trials like those that are being celebrated through the ACTA Awards are really beacons of light, I think, on this journey towards a truly evidence-based healthcare system. Now, of course, I work for NHMRC, so I want to say just a little bit about NHMRC support for clinical trials. I think many people probably in this room have been involved in applications to us for funding. We've funded clinical trials for a very long time, but it was, I think, an important step a few years ago to create a dedicated clinical trials and cohort studies scheme so that we could have appropriate framing around those, the peer review of those applications, but also so that it was really a declaration of the critical place of clinical trials and cohort studies in this broad range of health and medical research that NHMRC is attempting to fund. Now, on Wednesday this week, the Federal Minister for Health, the Honourable Greg Hunt, announced the outcomes of the latest round of our $75 million clinical trials and cohort studies scheme. And that's terrific timing. I guess somebody advised him well. Terrific timing in this week of International Clinical Trials Day. The Minister announced 33 grants, 22 of them are for clinical trials, and that's for $49.5 million altogether, and the remainder are for cohort studies, 11 grants, $25.9 million. Now, for the people who are in the system, these numbers matter. The funded rate this time was 11.3%, which is just so low, it's horrible. And I also know and have been advised that there were very many more applications that were high quality and that would have been deserving of funding if they had been manageable within the budget. So we think it's really good that there's also the Medical Research Future Fund funding clinical trials around the country, and also that the scope of those trials is now being broadened for funding by MRFF. But just to go back to that horrible number of 11.3%, people in the room may also know that that's actually a whole lot better than last year and the year before, because in the first round of the scheme, it was only 5.4%, and then the second round, it was 6.9%. But the reason that has gone up so much is actually because we've had a reduction in the number of applications. And you can probably tell us better than I know why that would be. But we're very pleased to have a higher rate of funding, even if the numbers are no bigger than in previous years. So our budget is obviously not big enough to meet the demand for funding for clinical trials, and support from other parts, from states and territories and other parts of the sector is absolutely critical here. But I think that more important perhaps even than that is the lost opportunity of those additional clinical trials that are not funded. And so we're always hoping to see that there'll be more and more support for this aspect of health and medical research in this country. We're nevertheless delighted that there are 22 trials that we're funding this year, and I'm hoping very much to see some of them amongst the ACTA trial awardees in a few years' time. So in closing, I congratulate ACTA on these really inspirational awards. They draw attention to the high quality of Australian investigator-initiated trials, and I think they encourage everyone to design and conduct their trials to the very highest standards, including consumer involvement, including high statistical standards, and so that as reflected in the winning trials, as we'll see tonight. So congratulations to all the teams whose trials were nominated for ACTA Awards this year, and I look forward now to seeing the winning trials announced. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Anne. A very broad scope there across the Australian landscape, but also the importance of infrastructure and of funding. And tonight we are seeing some of the fruits of all that investment. And so we'd like to now welcome Mrs. Lorraine Chiroux, the CEO of Australian Biotech, who is joining us remotely from Melbourne. And she'll be presenting the first award for the evening, our brand new ACTA Industry Partnership Award. Thank you, Lorraine.
Thank you, and congratulations for hosting such a great awards evening tonight, ACTA. I'm very honoured to join you to introduce and award the inaugural ACTA Industry Partnership Award. Around half of Australian biotech companies are undertaking clinical trials right now, and as Oz Biotech is the voice of the biotech industry, I'm really delighted to be involved in this award and in recognising the abundant quantity and exceptional quality of industry clinical trials taking place. I'd also like to acknowledge the advice and guidance of that ACTA received from the Research and Development Task Force as it was creating this important award. The task force is sponsored by Medicines Australia, Oz Biotech and the MTAA and their respective memberships, and it offers a unique industry perspective to governments and to the health sector. ACTA's Industry Partnership Award recognises a collaboration between a commercial entity and a team of academic investigators that have combined to conduct a high-impact clinical trial, including biopharmaceuticals, medtech, and digital medicine companies. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce the nominees of the first Industry Partnership Award. The first nomination is for therapy. The second nomination is for Better Knee, Better Me. And I'd like to extend a very warm congratulations to tonight's winner, Better Knee, Better Me. I welcome Professor Kim Bennell and Dr. Catherine Keating to come to the stage, please.
So for those of you who may not have caught that, we've got Professor Kim Bennell, the Trial Chief Investigator, and Dr. Catherine Keating, Head of the Health Strategy and Services at Medibank. Right, so we might backdrop with that, with congratulations once again.
Thank you. On behalf of my co-investigators, including Professor Rana Hinman, who co-led the trial with me, I'd like to thank ACTA for this award, which we're really thrilled to receive. I'd also like to thank Dr. Catherine Keating and Courtney Brown from Medibank, who, without the support of Medibank, none of this would have been possible. And the trial really arose from discussions with Catherine because Medibank were exploring a solution to their many members who have chronic knee pain. And that really aligned very well with the research agenda that we've had at the University of Melbourne for many years. And so we entered into a collaborative partnership where we co-designed remotely delivered lifestyle management programs and then tested them in over 400 Medibank members from across Australia. And the results showed that they had benefits and they were cost effective. And I think the impact that the trial has had was really made possible because of this academic industry partnership. And I think for me, working with the Medibank team on this project really has been one of the highlights of my career. So thank you.
Thank you. It's a real honour to receive the inaugural ACTA Partnership Award. I echo Kim, it's been a real privilege and joy to work with Kim and the extended Better Knee, Better Me consortium. One of Medibank's goals for this partnership was to support and accelerate the translation of clinical research. And we really considered this from the outset. And I'm really delighted to share that shortly after the completion of the clinical trial, Medibank began delivering the Better Knee, Better Me program as an ongoing at-scale health service free of charge to our members. So thank you again, and hoping there's many more research partnerships to come in the future. Thank you.
Don't forget that. What a wonderful example of instantly implementing the results of the trial into practice. Very inspiring. All right, so congratulations once again. I'd now like to introduce my fellow ACTA Board Director and Senior Consumer Representative, Ms. Ann Mackenzie AM, who's joining us by Zoom from Perth, and she will be presenting the ACTA Consumer Awards. Thank you, Ann.
Thank you, and it's an absolute privilege to be here with you all, albeit that I'm here in Perth. So before I start, I'd like to acknowledge that I am coming from the lands of the Noongar Nation and pay my respects to their elders, past, present and emerging. I think there's been mention of COVID, and I would just like to say that, yes, it's been a terrible time, but there's also been some fabulous things that have come out of a lot of consumer involvement in research, and I was privileged to lead a group of people from across the country to provide advice on rapid research that was being done into COVID. And I also think one of the other things that we don't recognise is we now have a country full of armchair epidemiologists, and every second person can tell us about the fabulous need for research in this country. So I think that's a really positive thing that's come out of the COVID experience. I think this year that it's fantastic to see that there were 6 nominations for the award, for the Consumer Involvement Award. And I see this as an endorsement of the hard work done by many involved with ACTA over the last several years. And that includes, of course, consumers and community members on the various committees. And so it really has shown that we are starting to pay dividends of that investment. I'd like to acknowledge that there were 2 non-eligible trials that unfortunately didn't meet the eligibility criteria for the award this year. They were a great example of consumer involvement in trials, and we want to encourage such trials to apply in the future for this award. They were the VALID trial and the medicinal cannabis for anorexia in advanced cancer. So congratulations for the work that you're doing, even if you weren't eligible for this particular award. So the nominees for the Consumer Involvement Award for 2022 in alphabetical order are Be Pain Free, Empower SMS, Therap ANZA 1603, and Online Yoga for Knee Osteoarthritis. We'd like to give an honourable mention for the Be Pain Free trial, and it gives me great pleasure to announce the Empower SMS as the 2020 winner. And I'd like to call Dr. Anna Singleton to come forward and receive this award.
Congratulations. We'll just hear from Ann.
Thank you. Oh, it's such an honor to be here and to receive this award on behalf of my team. This trial was part of my PhD research that's dedicated to my best friend, Molly. During her breast cancer treatment, I would text her anything to make her smile. She really likes puppies. When her treatment was over, Molly struggled to feel like herself again. I met a breast cancer surgeon, Associate Professor Elizabeth Elder, who said a lot of her patients felt the same way. At the time, my team, led by Professor Julie Redfern, had just published a world first trial showing that text messages could help people recover after a heart attack. So I asked Molly, what do you think? Next thing I know, Molly and I are working with a team of breast cancer survivors and the Westmead Breast Cancer Institute to create a text message program that they called Empower SMS. Skip to now, the trial is published and showed Empower SMS improved medication adherence, and participants found it useful, motivating, and felt like their medical team was supporting them between appointments. I'd like to thank my team at the University of Sydney and the Westmead Breast Cancer Institute especially my supervisors who share my passion for consumer-led research, my research assistant, Rebecca Rayside, for all her hard work, and my husband, Mitch, and my family for all their support. But most importantly, I want to thank the 170 breast cancer survivors who turned their worst moments into an award-winning program. Because of them, I'm working to make Empower SMS part of usual care, and I just applied for funding to expand to GP practices. But now, my favorite part, one of my trial participants, Robin Kelly, will now say a few words about how it felt to receive Empower SMS.
So thank you for the opportunity to speak about my positive and highly beneficial experience of being part of the Empower SMS program. My cancer treatment started with chemotherapy, followed by surgery, radiation, and a targeted therapy. I became a participant of the Empower SMS after radiation. All the topics range from physical to medical to well-being, all of which were remarkably well-timed. I remember being in my kitchen, totally overwhelmed as I waited for some results of a test, and an Empower SMS just happened to come through. The message was a useful one about positive self-talk, exactly what I needed right there and then. Even though these messages were totally sent randomly, it was uncanny how often those messages were linked to whatever I was up to with treatment or how I was feeling. During a chat with a fellow patient, we were discussing how inaccurate a Google search can be, but I had the advantage. I had Empower SMS. Empower SMS program often included links, and I knew that those links were going to take me to exactly the type of information I needed, and it would be correct. My treatment continued, and I'd often refer back to the previous SMSs, which was a godsend because chemo brain is something that exists. Thank you to the Empower SMS team for asking me to be part of this program. Even with the support of my amazing family, friends, medical team, having a text message from Power SMS was another support avenue. And I truly believe wholeheartedly that it is through this Empower SMS program that I've had the positive outcome that I've had. The Empower SMS program enables strong women to be empowered during a time of life when control and power just seem to disappear. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Robin and Anna. So I'd now like to introduce Professor Catherine Lee, who is the chair of the ACTA Sting and a senior biostatistician at the Murdoch Children's Institute. Catherine will be presenting the ACTA Sting Excellence in Trial Statistics Award. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Meg, and hello to you all. The quality of a trial is really underpinned by the quality of the study design and the quality of the statistical analysis. In order to conduct a high quality study, it's important to have statistical input throughout the life of the study. That means from the conception of the research question, the study design, through the conduct of the study, through to the analysis and reporting of those study results. In 2015, the ACTA Statistics in Trial Interest Group was established to bring together statisticians across the country and to raise awareness of this critical discipline. Currently, we have over 150 members, and we facilitate the support and the training and the collaboration among statisticians across the country. And our ultimate aim is to improve the quality of clinical trials nationally. In 2007, the ACTA Sting, together with the ACTA Board, established the Excellence in Statistics Award to recognize the unique and critical contribution of this discipline to the clinical trials sector. Every year, a panel of senior statisticians get together and they judge trials on the high quality of their study design, their statistical analysis, planning and conduct, and the reporting of the study results. And I'm delighted today to be able to announce both the runner-up and the winner of this award. So there were 6 nominees for this award in 2022. There was the Optimist A trial, the PADDY trial, the Quartet study, Remap Cap, SAS, and therapy. So firstly, the runner-up. It gives me great pleasure to announce that the runner-up award goes to the REMAP CAP trial. Can I please invite Associate Professor Zoe McQuilton from the School of Public Health in Monash University to come and accept the award. And it now gives me great pleasure to announce the winner of the Excellence in Statistics Award, which goes to the Paddy trial. And I'd like to invite Professor Andrew Forbes to the stage, who's also from the School of Public Health, Monash University, to accept this award.
Have you got a good photo? You got Victorian head down trying to hide. Sorry. So I'm honoured and delighted to accept this award from ACTA on behalf of the entire Paddy trial team, particularly the Chief Investigator, Thomas Corcoran. I think he's here somewhere. Yes, thank you, Thomas. You can get off your phone now. The Australian New Zealand College of Anaesthetists Clinical Trials Network, who did a marvellous job running the trial, and the School of Public Health and Preventive Medicine and the Central Clinical School at Monash University. So the Paddy trial, see up there, no, title's gone, perioperative administration of dexamethasone in non-cardiac, non-urgent, non-cardiac surgery. So in brief, the trial was conducted because it's well known that dexamethasone can be used to reduce the occurrence of post-operative nausea and vomiting, but there have been concerns that being an immune suppressant, it might increase the risk of infections at the surgical site post-surgery. So the Paddy trial was set up to definitively answer this question. It was a placebo-controlled non-inferiority trial in 9,000 or close to 9,000 patients across 55 centres in 4 countries. And the results of the trial were very conclusive. There was no important increased risk of surgical site infection. So this creates a very good path for clinicians to be able to prevent post-operative nausea and vomiting in patients without them being concerned about the risk of surgical site infection being increased. Now, in terms of the statistical elements that led to this award, it was clear from the design of the Paddy trial, or the impetus of it, that it was going to be a high-profile, high-impact trial. So everything about the design and its conduct and its statistical analysis needed to be done extremely rigorously. In terms of the statistical elements, there was lots of discussion with the clinical investigators and with the statisticians, myself and others, about the non-inferiority margin. Sounds a simple thing, but something very difficult to determine. And it's ultimately what the results of the trial will hang upon relative to that predetermined margin. There are also aspects such as how does one monitor a trial for harm and non-inferiority, and also simulating many different trial configurations for the statistical analysis. So a detailed statistical analysis plan was prepared, made publicly available online, and was completely adhered to in the final analysis of the trial. And this enabled transparency of the methods used in the analysis of the trial, and also robustness of the conclusions. And I think I have to say that it sailed through New England Journal of Medicine fairly easily. And I think that's a testament to all of the planning that was done for this trial. So again, on behalf of all the Paddy investigators, I thank ACTA for this award. Thanks.
Thank you, Andrew. It's timely to reflect on how important good design and rigorous statistics are to the impact of a trial. So now we get to announcing the 2022 ACTA Trial of the Year Award. And a reminder, these awards are for trials that are multi-centre, investigator-driven, randomised, controlled, and designed to improve patient-centred outcomes or healthcare delivery. I'm very pleased to announce the nominees for the ACTA 2000 Trial of the Year Award, as well as the STING Excellence in Trial Statistics Award category that we heard about just now. We also have the Anaesthetic Depth and Post-Operative Delirium Trial, the HiPod Trial, RSVP Trial, and the TROG ALTG Saffron 2 Trial. So I'd now like to welcome Ann Kilso again and Minister Hazzard to announce the winner and finalists.
Thank you, Meg. So there are two runners-up for this very important award, and I'll announce them in alphabetical order. The first is the Quartet study, and Dr. Emily Atkins is here to receive this award, I believe. And the second runner-up, congratulations to the SAS trial. And I'm pleased to introduce Professor Bruce Neal to receive this award. Congratulations. The minister announced that.
And yes, indeed, it is the minister announcing the next one. Yes. We are really building the suspense here.
Oh, look, they have the greatest pleasure in passing it over to me. That's good. I've read that. That's excellent. Look, can I just say what a privilege it is actually to be here tonight and to be in the presence of all of you. Just as I was looking at all of those various projects, those various trials that you've undertaken, it is amazing. And to be in your presence is actually my honour. So thank you very much. And I'm sure Anne and Meg feel the same way. The only thing that worries me is all these researchers appear to be hellishly young. I was just sitting there thinking, what have I done with the last 50? Anyway. So the ACTA Trial of the Year winner, I'm very pleased to announce, and it's got the longest title of the night, the randomised, embedded, multifactorial adaptive platform trial for community-acquired pneumonia, REMAP CAP. Well done, thank you.
So we welcome Dr. Lisa Higgins here representing the REMAP CAP team, a large and a very effective team. And after we immortalise this moment, we'll have a few words from Lisa. Thank you.
Thank you all, and thank you very much to ACTA for the award on behalf of the entire REMAP CAP team, many of whom are in the audience today. So REMAP CAP is a global adaptive platform trial for community-acquired pneumonia that, when it was designed to always be able to rapidly adapt in the event of a respiratory pandemic. And then we had a pandemic, and it's been a very, very busy 2 years. As an adaptive platform trial, the REMAP CAP trial can investigate multiple treatments simultaneously. And as a result of that, in the past 2 years, we've actually been able to reach 7 conclusions. So we have determined interventions which are beneficial in critically ill patients with COVID. So things like the interleukin-6 receptor antagonists. We've determined interventions which don't work, like convalescent plasma. And we've even determined interventions which are potentially harmful, like hydroxychloroquine. And we're still going. So we are a platform trial and we have 12 domains currently open, trying to answer many more questions. And our success during the pandemic has really been critically dependent on the fact that we had It was pre-planned, we had pre-approval, we had funding in place, and that we were able to rapidly acquire more funding. And I'd particularly like to thank our main funders, the NHMRC, the Minderoo Foundation, and the New South Wales Office of Health and Medical Research, because their financial support has really been critical to our success over the last 2 years. But all of this success is due to an amazing team. So I'm standing here on behalf of Professor Steve Webb, who has designed and led this trial globally, and ideally would be standing here today, but like all our amazing ICU clinicians have done over the past 2 years, Steve is currently in an ICU in Perth working clinically, although I really do hope he's managed to be online at the moment. We also, under Steve's leadership, have an amazing project team. So we have our outstanding global project manager, Cam Green, in the audience today, and he is the glue that keeps this trial together and running efficiently. We also have our superb Australian project manager, Jane Parker, as well as many other members of the team. And what they've done is they've overseen, prior to the pandemic, we had 49 sites in 12 countries, and we now have 361 sites in 25 countries. So it's been a huge amount of work by the project team over the past 2 years. We have over 1,300 patients randomised in Australia and over 11,000 globally. And those 11,000 patients have had more than 20,000 randomisations. I'd like to thank our amazing statistical team at Berry Consultants. And I'd particularly like to thank the staff at the sites. So to all the nurses, research coordinators, doctors, everyone who's worked in ICU on this trial, their dedication, particularly over the last 2 years, is actually really hard to put into words. ICU staff have been under an immense amount of pressure during this pandemic. And despite that, they've continued to show up. They've continued to randomise patients into this trial. They've continued to collect data. And for that, we are truly grateful. And most importantly, to our patients and their family members, any time in ICU is a really stressful time. But being in ICU during a pandemic with a new illness that we're learning how to treat at a time when family members couldn't visit their loved ones in ICU magnifies that stress exponentially. And despite all of those challenges, they still agreed to take part in a trial to help future patients. And as a community, I think we really need to be eternally grateful for that, that when they were their most vulnerable, they still agreed to take part in a trial to help future patients. Now, I feel like someone's going to start playing some like wrap-up music and I'm going to have forgotten to thank someone. So for anyone involved in REMAP-CAP, and it literally is thousands of people globally, thank you. We coordinate the trial from the ANZIC RC at Monash University. We globally coordinate it there and we coordinate Australia and some other countries from there, but there really is a team throughout the world working on this trial. And thank you to every one of you. It's been a real privilege to work on a trial that has made a real difference to patient outcomes in this pandemic. And as a platform trial, we're still going. So watch this space because we hope to come up with many more answers in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lisa. And I don't know if you did forget anyone, but you remembered the most important people, and it's the people who trust you with their health and the way that we get the answers that we need. So I'd now like to welcome Mrs. Janine Williams, who is the early phase clinical trial manager at Bellberry, and Mr. Duncan McInnes, the Director of Stakeholder Engagement for New South Wales ACT at MTP Connect. And I'd like them to say a few words as premium partners. Thank you.
Some slides as well. Oh. Fantastic.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for the introduction and also the opportunity to be here today. I'd also like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land. Bellberry is very proud to be a sponsor of this year's Clinical Trial of the Year award, which really acknowledges the contributions of trialists, trial teams, consumers and industry partners. A little bit about Bellberry though, and how our work supports the sector, but also how we are involved in celebrating International Clinical Trials Day. So Bellberry is an independent, not-for-profit national provider of human research ethics services. We support 12 committees which review projects over a broad range of clinical trial areas and are reviewing studies which
have a lot of benefit to society. Our mission is to protect and improve the safety of research participants, and also to improve the quality, efficiency and effectiveness of research. Human clinical research is inherently risky, and the provision of ethical and scientific review by a Human Research Ethics Committee is an integral part of ensuring participant safety, but also is very important in ensuring the scientific merit and integrity of the study itself. Today, Bellbury launched our second clinical trial activity report, which is available from the Bellbury website and summarises the research activity overseen by our committees, which, as you can see from this, which you can see from this diagram here, represents research conducted nationally. Bellbury committees review approximately a third of research projects that are conducted under a CTN application in Australia each year. And I wanted to share with you a couple of highlights from this year's report. Beautiful. So Bellbury committees review and support a really broad range of research, including investigator-driven, collaborative group, and industry-sponsored studies conducted in both the public and the private sector, and that are either single or multi-centre projects. With the growth in clinical trials conducted in Australia year on year, it's really great to see the growth in multi-centre research, but also the growth in research conducted across public and private sectors. In keeping with trends observed in previous years and throughout the broader sector, oncology studies continue to play a big part of the work that we do. But not unsurprisingly, immunology studies have also been an important component of the work that we've done in the last year, particularly in looking at intervention and, for the prevention and also the treatment of COVID. But it's also really great to see the breadth of research studies that are submitted and undertaken in our country every year. So I'd like to congratulate both the nominees and the award winners tonight. But also everyone that contributes in every way that they do to the sector. And I actually also wanted to leave you with this quote, which from the National Statement, which embodies what we do at Bellbury and is a critical part of the clinical trial process that we all are involved in. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. It's an absolute privilege to be here, and MTP Connect is very proud to be supporting these awards again. MTP Connect is Australia's industry growth centre for medtech, pharma, biotech and digital health in Australia. We're also an independent not-for-profit company, and we exist to help build the sector. We've heard a lot this evening about the influence of clinical trials in our response to COVID-19, but I want to start by highlighting a paper that was published in Nature in February this year. It was a 10-year follow-up of the patients who were involved in the first trial of the CAR-T cell therapy for cancer, and found that more than 10 years after the trial began, this gentleman who received what was then the first experimental treatment in 2010 was cancer-free more than 10 years later and essentially cured of cancer. I highlight this because it truly shows the transformational and life-saving nature of clinical trials and the impact they can have on health outcomes. MTP Connect has supported these awards since 2018, and this time last year we released the update to our 2017 clinical trials paper. One of the things we highlighted was, as well as the impact on health outcomes, is the economic impact of trial activity in Australia. More than $1.4 billion worth of expenditure in 2019, more than 8,000 skilled jobs, and an approximately 5% share of global industry-sponsored trials. Earlier this month, we released the update to our 2022 sector competitiveness plan, and despite a blip in 2020, the number of trials initiated in Australia each year continues to grow at the rate of about 5%. It will come as no news to anyone in this room that one of the major constraints on that growth is the availability of suitably trained CRAs and clinical trials coordinators. And that's why we're so excited to announce the 2 new training programs that will be rolled out over the coming months to train clinical trials, clinical research associates and CTCs. and more details of that are available on our website. So with that, I congratulate all of the winners and nominees tonight, and thank you all for all that you do. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Duncan. Thank you, Janine. So I'm sure you'll agree that this has been a wonderful evening to celebrate some truly exceptional clinical trials. It's important that we take advantage of nights like this to take a moment to reflect on all the outstanding work that's being done in these and the many other trials being conducted in Australia by our own teams and by our colleagues. I myself feel proud to be able to play a small part in this humbling work. And I hope that you also leave tonight feeling proud and reflecting on the contributions that you've made in such an important and impactful industry. And we see this in these current years more clearly than previously. So I look forward to picking up these conversations and many more at the 2022 ACTA Annual Scientific Meeting, which will be held on the 7th and 8th of November at SAMRI in Adelaide. So I hope many of you will take the opportunity to participate there. I'd also like to thank once again our incredible partners who make this event possible. Our premium partners, Bellberry Limited and MTP Connect, our venue partner, the NHMRC Clinical Trials Centre at the University of Sydney, and our in-kind supporters, AusBiotech, CTIQ, Medical Technology Association of Australia, and Research Australia. And now I'd also like to thank very much the ACTA Central team for organising this event and ensuring it's all run so smoothly, particularly the hybrid nature of it just threw in a few extra curveballs that they've managed wonderfully. I know you've all been working really hard, and I'd like to particularly mention our events coordinator, Lee Hashard, and our events supporter, Bernadette Withers. Finally, and finally, I'd like to thank our judging panel members, invisible tonight, but without them undertaking the very difficult task of assessing these very high quality trials, we wouldn't be able to have this award and to celebrate the excellence. Each year we get wonderful calibers of nominations, and this year has been no different. And so that concludes the formalities. I hope you'll all join us for a networking function in the foyer. But before we move to that, I'd like the Minister, please, and Ann Kilso, as well as all the award winners, to please join us for photos, and then progress, please, to the function outside. Thank you.